Hey students, today we're going to talk about multiplying polynomials. So first we're going to review distributive property before we go into multiplying polynomials. So if I have parentheses, remember parentheses tell me to distribute. So I'm going to take this 9x and I'm going to distribute to both of these terms inside the parentheses. Okay, remember when you're distributing about your exponent rules. So when you're multiplying, you add your exponents. So remember this x has a imaginary 1 on it, and this x does too. So when I multiply 9x times x, that's 9x squared. And then when I multiply 9x times 1, it's 9x. Okay, because remember, x times x gives me x squared because I'm going to add those exponents. And I can't combine like terms, so that's my final answer. Let's look at the next one. The next one is the same way. I'm going to distribute to both terms. Remember, if it doesn't have an exponent, we put a 1. Because when we distribute, we're adding our exponents. So, negative 2x squared times x to the third is negative 6x cubed, because 2 plus 1 gives me 3. And then negative 2x squared times negative 5 is positive, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then 2 times 5 is 10, and then x squared, because I don't have another x to combine it with. And so can I combine those? Are those like terms? No, they're not. So that is my final answer. Let's do the next one. Number 3. Again, I'm going to distribute. So I have 4x to the fifth times x to the third. So it's 4x to the, I'm going to add those, and so that would be an 8. And then 4x to the fifth times negative 3x squared would be minus, because a positive times a negative is a negative. And then 4 times 3 is 12. So I'm going to multiply the coefficients, but then I'm going to add the exponents. So I'm going to get x to the 7th. And since I cannot combine those, because that's x to the 8th and that's x to the 7th, those are not like terms, that is my final answer. And our last example, I have negative 10x times 5 and then negative 10x times x. So remember, if there's not an exponent, we put a 1 on it. So negative 10x times 5 is negative 50x. And negative 10x times x is negative 10x squared. Now, can I combine these? No, because remember, this is x and this is x squared. They're not like. So that would be my final answer. So that's just a quick review, because it's the same kind of concept. Now, let's look at multiplying polynomials. It's the same thing. We are just distributing 2 terms instead of 1 this time. Okay, up at the top we distributed 1 term. Now we're going to distribute 2 terms. So our first step is to separate the first binomial and put each term with the second binomial. Okay, so our first step is to separate the first binomial and put each term with the second binomial. So if you look, I have my first binomial is 2x minus 3. I'm going to separate that. So I'm going to have this one and then this one. So I'm going to have 2x and I'm going to have minus 3. And you see how I put it with the second binomial. okay, which is x minus 4. X minus 4. Okay, so this second binomial went with each one of these terms. Now, the second step is to distribute both sets of parentheses. Okay, so we're going to distribute both sets of parentheses. So I'm going to take this 2x and I'm going to distribute to its set of parentheses. And I'm going to take the negative 3 and distribute it to its set of parentheses. Okay, so 2x times x gives me 2x squared, because remember we have a 1 as our exponents. We add our exponents. And then 2x times negative 4 is negative 8x. Then we do the second set. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. And negative 3 times a negative 4 is a positive 12. Then our last step is to combine like terms. So that's our last step, is to combine like terms. Okay? So my like terms in this case are negative 8 and negative 3. So I just leave the 2x squared alone. Negative 8 minus 3, negative 8x minus 3x is negative 11x. And then I bring down my plus 12. And this right here would be my answer. Okay, this is my answer. Okay, so now let's look at the next example. We have 5x plus 2 and x minus 3. So our first step says to separate the first binomial. So we're going to separate it, 5x and plus 2, and put it with the second binomial. So my second binomial is x plus 3, x plus 3. Okay, and we put, it's minus 3. I messed up. Let me get another sheet. Sorry, y'all. Sorry, guys. So we're going to separate our first, 5x, and then plus 2. And then we're going to put our second binomial with that. So it would be x minus 3, x minus 3. Sorry about that. So I took the first binomial and I separated it into two parts. And then I took the second binomial and put it with each one of those. And now the second step says to distribute. So I'm going to distribute. So 5x times x is 5x squared. 5x times negative 3 is negative 15x. 2 times x is positive 2x. And 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6. Now the last step says to combine like terms. So my like terms are negative 15x and 2x. So I have 5x squared minus 13x minus 6. And so that is my final answer. Oops. Okay. And our last example for the night. Okay. Again, I'm going to take my first binomial and separate it. So I'm going to have x. And then this is a negative 1, so I'm going to have a minus 1 there. And then I'm going to take my second binomial and put it with each term. X plus 2. The second step says to distribute, so I'm going to distribute the first one. I'm going to distribute this. So x times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. Negative 1 times x is negative 1x. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Now I'm going to do the last step, which says to combine my like terms. Well, I have 2x and negative 1x, so I have x squared. 2x minus 1x is 1x, and then minus 2. And so this would be my final answer. Make sure that you have an understanding of how to do multiplying polynomials. We'll go over more of it tomorrow in class. Have a wonderful night, and make sure you have this first page completely filled out.